Welcome to our special Rewind episode where we highlight our most forward-thinking conversations about AI, emerging technologies, and the career landscape that's reshaping industrial cybersecurity. Welcome to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. In each episode, we dive into the world of industrial cybersecurity. Join us as we cover the latest trends, innovations, and practical insights as we talk with leaders and practitioners across the industry. Gear up and let's get into this week's episode.
So we just came back from S4, another great conference down in Florida. And what I will tell you is that this is a conference that's been going on for almost 2 decades now, and we've attended the last handful. But I'm starting to see more participation of roles that are being defined. One, companies are starting to create OT cybersecurity positions within their organization. And it's a combination of both engineering and plant teams and the IT teams. And from our experience, those organizations that have a really tight relationship between IT and OT, they're aligned, they're very collaborative, they're transparent, they recognize each other's strengths and weaknesses, and they leverage each other, and their partners are starting to build a coalition around how do we provide a cybersecurity strategy for our business. And so the S4 does a really good job of, one, bringing all of the technology partners in, the leaders, the visionaries, activities that are going on in this space, use case studies, what they're witnessing around the world. They have a lot of different events in there, but a lot of the vendors that Gartner has published in their Magic Quadrant report attend and participate at the S4 conference.
Well, a selfless plug for Dale and the team that sponsor, promote, and run the S4 conference, Dale Peterson. That conference is designed for the OT ecosystem as it's evolving, as it's becoming more prevalent, and the tools and technologies that are there for that organizational structure. It's designed to promote that. Was started out of the operational side and has continued to grow and evolve. It's a gathering place for that ecosystem to be at the cutting edge of what's there, because it is such an important shift as organizations are trying to figure out, how do I apply the same frameworks to secure and protect my OT infrastructure as I do my IT infrastructure. And there are differences in the way that it's applied, but the frameworks can be similar in the overarching piece of that.
Right. And also how it's funded, because on the other side, a lot of it's CapEx.
If you'd like to sponsor an upcoming episode or be a guest on Industrial Cybersecurity Insider, reach out and let us know. Use the links in the show notes below and connect with us to share your expertise with our growing community of industrial cybersecurity professionals. Now, back to the show.
And OT is obviously primarily OpEx, and it's not that OT doesn't have OpEx, they do, but in order to replace end-of-life and end-of-support machines on your plant floor, it usually requires a capital project to do that. It's not like you're going to get an OpEx project that's going to come in and say, I'm going to do recontrol and upgrade PLCs, replace PLCs, upgrade my SCADA system, replace my SCADA system, update my network, replace my network. Those types of activities traditionally and typically in the manufacturing world on the plant floor usually fall under the umbrella of a capital project.
Because of the life cycle it takes to complete it, do it, the cost associated. Yes.
The way they depreciate it off their books, the way the accounting rules are handled, and that's why a lot of that stuff falls into that particular piece. So as an organization, you're going to have to figure that out, that blend between CapEx and OpEx. Because when you do have capital projects, and it's something that, from an IT leadership, you might want to try to get your arms around, is what capital are we going to spend in the next 3 to 5 years, and what's it going to be focused on? That's the time that you really want to start talking about funding your OT cybersecurity technologies in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
And because it's not, for most organizations, this is all net new stuff. And because there's a lot of unknowns within these manufacturing facilities, if you have a lot of plants, if you have, a dozen or more plants, it's going to take a bit to go through each one of them, right? Think globally, but you got to act locally. What you apply to one plant and how you get to it is not necessarily going to be the same at another plant, right? On how you get to that information, right? I mean, the technology would be the same and you can execute the same way, meaning that how you get to that data, but some plants are more standardized than others. And some of them have a lot of varying different types of automation technologies in there that they use. And I know we've talked about that in previous podcasts that we've done.
Yeah.
But it's unfamiliar and unknown. And so you have to have an organization that really knows how to go in there to do this work and not be disruptive, right? You can't shut the plant down while it's working, or you got to work around their maintenance windows and schedules that they put out there that you have to come in behind and work while that plant is down or portions of that plant are down to do some of this work. But just keep that in mind when you start pursuing OT cybersecurity strategies. And don't just pick a tool for threat hunting. If that's what your intent is from an IT perspective, if that's what you're looking for, you're kind of missing the boat a little bit, right? You really need to look at a technology that meets the majority of it to meet the OT needs, right? Because you want them to see value and benefit of it. If you have a cybersecurity OT IDS platform today, and if I'm working in your manufacturing plant, installing a packaging line or doing some life cycle replacement, I should be seeing information from your OT IDS platform to give me a better idea from an engineering perspective of what I'm up against inside this plant. What are the weaknesses that are in here? What are the vulnerabilities that you have? What's the remote access look like? What kind of things should I be looking for and maybe implementing for you and designing into these machine centers as I complete the project that we were brought in to do in regards to doing that refresh project?
Well, as organizations are going down that budget cycle, that approval process, and your IT leadership is trying to incorporate the holistic enterprise-wide security strategy to build into that CapEx portion for the OT security as well. And there may be a portion of it. If you look at the way that IT outsources and this SOC and their leverage partnerships with other third-party providers, there may be a piece of that as you're trying to leverage, how do I support the operational side from a managed services of who's going to interpret and understand all of this net new work that's coming in. Maybe there's a CapEx and an OpEx component within that as they're trying to understand what that looks like.
And set the ground rules too, right? And understand them, because a lot of the OT guys are not big fans of cloud solutions and they don't want them. They want things to be on-prem because in their mind, if it's instrumental to running the plant and you lose your WAN or you lose the cloud piece or whatever, they don't want that to impact them. And the other thing is they don't want a lot of their information to be somewhere that it's not within their control. I would say from an IT leadership perspective, you need to start helping them understand that, one, all of these platforms that are out there, again, back to the Gartner Magic Quadrant report, all of them provide cloud-based solutions. Many of them provide on-prem, but they all provide a cloud-based solution. So now's the time to talk to your OT leadership on the values and benefits of cloud and why it's relevant and it's important, and help them with that. Otherwise, they're going to fall back to on-prem solutions. They're going to tell the OEMs and system integrators that are coming in and driving some of these OT cybersecurity initiatives within the plant. And they'll do it with or without you because their ecosystem is bringing this to the table and starting to ask those questions. And a lot of times we catch IT flat-footed because they either have a tool that doesn't necessarily fit round peg square hole, or they haven't been sharing, or they haven't even been looking at it.
Well, and as we look at the shifting landscape, the changes that we as a country have seen in the last, 60 days, let's call it, with DOGE and the implementation of new policies, procedures, guidance from the federal government, there's a chance that the accounting rules and regulations could potentially change and shift to be more favorable.
Right.
And the tax regulations could shift and change to be more favorable for some of these projects as we as a country are looking to secure and protect our critical infrastructure, our manufacturing, and how we can do that. So now may be the time to see what you can do as an organization to get some of these projects in there and really begin bolstering your cyber presence.
as we're seeing in our business, the things that are coming back on shore.
Yes,
Right.
for sure.
And so obviously those are going to be capital expenditures, and you're going to start seeing some retooling. And when you start seeing that type of activity within the manufacturing arena, that's the time to start thinking about your cybersecurity strategy. If the money is being set up and set aside for OT cybersecurity, and that's the time to do it, right? So whether there's tax incentives that are driving it, onshoring that's driving it, retooling of your plants that you've got going on, and you need to start. That's the time to start trying to figure out, how do I set money aside in order to improve my cybersecurity posture within my manufacturing environment.
Well,
and you got to bring all the sides together. You got to get, as I used to say, you got to get all the liars in the same room, right? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I'm basically saying those that are responsible, the key stakeholders, the decision-making teams, need to be involved and engaged in this journey.
Well, as manufacturing shifts, as more come back to the U.S., that the onshoring, as you mentioned a while ago, you look at AI and how it's playing a prevalent role. The data centers, I saw a statistic last week or early this week where 65%, I believe was the number, of the AI data centers around the globe are focused in the U.S. Look at the production of those data centers and the power that's taking to do that, what's happening from an infrastructure and onshoring. It's really becoming prevalent of we are trying to make sure that we're going down this road correctly.
Right. And we're seeing that in our business, right? Because we do a lot of data center work, right? When it comes to the power systems for you folks out there, our organization focuses in the semiconductor business, but also in the data center business, meaning you got building automation, building management systems, power management systems, and we're wrapping cybersecurity because those data center companies are going in with cybersecurity in mind. Right.
Absolutely.
It's not an afterthought for them. It's part of the project going forward with those guys.
It can't be. If you manage a data center that's 300,000 or 400,000 square feet or whatever that is, if you lose your cooling or you lose the chilling in that data center, you don't have a data center any longer.
Power fluctuations,
for sure.
So when you think about cybersecurity, a lot of folks, they think that term, which is an IT-based role. But when you talk about OT, it's kind of a different animal, if you will. So what are some of the challenges that you've witnessed working with these different clients in that dynamic between a group that doesn't always work well together, but they have different responsibilities, they have different roles. So what has been some of the challenges you've seen, if any, working in these different verticals that are pursuing improving their cybersecurity posture in their manufacturing environments?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the nail. I think that is the exact challenge, is bringing all of these players to the table. You have your IT team who has been in charge of cybersecurity, but now you have this OT and plant floor technology that you need to protect. So you need your OT engineers that they know the asset, they know the processes, and you kind of have to have them working together. And sometimes it's been a struggle with clients because they've never worked together before. So bringing them together you also have your networking team and your stakeholders. And it's definitely been a challenge with some clients, or just in general, it probably is anywhere, bringing everybody together to move these projects forward. So sometimes you'll have a little bit of a standstill while you're trying to figure out who's going to be in charge of, who's going to take ownership of this task or this project.
Yeah. And for those clients that are entering into this for the first time, right, as far as putting these types of technologies into their manufacturing environment, what have been some of the big moments that they've witnessed, or aha moment? What have you seen as far as once these tools are embedded with the professionals who know how to put them in there and use them, what kind of things have unfolded from there in that realm?
Yeah, we see that they kind of don't know the internal issues they can be bringing to each other. We've seen IT scanning the OT plant floor, and then that's causing disruption to the processes. And that's something they don't realize what's happening. But then the downtime is something we're able to use these tools for, put it in, see that a scan was happening. And now we're able to bring these two teams together, make an exclusion list or something like that. So now it's not going to bring down their network or cause disruption to their process.
Yeah, that's a great point. That gets back to roles and responsibilities and the unknown, right? I call it the round peg square hole. Sometimes IT's behavior, the tools that they use, their practices are disruptive to that plant floor, and the plant floor had never really been able to put their finger on what caused that piece of equipment to quit working, mysteriously, right? Because it can't find a mechanical issue. And it's like, what happened? Nobody really knows. They're just more interested in getting that machine back up and running versus going back through the forensics of why did I lose that machine? And it might have been because IT was scanning the network at an inopportune time.
I'm sure with your years of experience in manufacturing, you probably had seen that and dealt with it firsthand.
Yeah,
and
guarantee that it goes on, right? Especially if the two aren't working together and if they don't have the right technologies in place to demonstrate what that interaction looks like in that space. So I get it. So what kind of new emerging technologies are you seeing in this field? I know in 4 years, it's moved quite a bit, right? I mean, when you think about the features and functionalities and capabilities and some of the add-ons that these software companies have added, what are you seeing in that realm?
Yeah, I'd say we're now seeing a lot more of these companies starting to integrate with a secure remote access, either if it's going to be in-house or they're using somebody else's, whether it's an OT built secure remote access to be able to, for these vendors or OEMs to remote into their equipment to perform maintenance or whatever it be. And also just the integrations in general to existing IT cybersecurity tools. They're starting to really widen and bring that OT into the whole portfolio of cybersecurity as a whole, which I think is good if we need IT to be at the plate. Also OT, it's good to have a little stake in it for both of them, that it kind of brings them together a little bit.
Yeah, but it's remote to your point, because our experience is you usually find several different remote access technologies being used in a single manufacturing facility, right? It's just not one. It's usually several, right? And that doesn't even count the folks that walk into the plant with their own equipment, like an OEM or a system integrator who's working on a project or is there to do some type of support, warranty, or maintenance work. And they just plug their machine into that control system network and nobody really knows what they're doing. They can't see them. The IT's not monitoring that connectivity or that access. So that is an interesting take on remote access into the environment. That the traditional way of getting in there is just not cutting it anymore, and they need to kind of come at it more formalized and more standard approach. That's for sure. You talked about school in the very beginning. We recognize a lot of the universities who do have technology, computer science, cybersecurity, engineering programs, but they're not really focused on this OT cybersecurity stuff. I mean, right? I mean, is that something that you haven't seen while you were in school, or other engineers? I know you work with dozens of other engineering folks from a lot of different schools from all around the country. What are you hearing from them?
Yeah, I mean, definitely when I was in school and all my colleagues, this wasn't something that was taught, let alone I didn't even know about it. So I have heard of it starting to become a program, I think, at a few universities, which is good. I mean, I think this is something that's going to be a huge field and we need to start educating because we need those professionals that have the experience and the knowledge to go out and work with these tools. You can't expect somebody just to come in day one and be able to manage one of these tools and everything be okay right away. So I think schools definitely need to start acknowledging this as the big field and career path that it's going to be. And I think there's enough to learn that they could make a whole program. Also, I think schools probably need to be a little bit more hands-on. Like when I was in school, I had internships that I would do. And I think that's also a great experience for students and young professionals to go and learn about the industry and the field and have that hands-on experience, because sometimes your coursework isn't exactly what your day-to-day is going to be.
The engineering schools, primarily internship programs, the goal is for you to go actually work in a plant. I mean, don the uniform, as I call it, the PPE, safety shoes, high vis, hard hat, safety glasses. And your internship programs, be it chemical, mechanical, electrical, and industrial, puts you in the field while you're in school, right? Versus computer science on the IT side, that may not be an opportunity that's presented to them. And not everybody wants to work in the industrial field, as we're aware. But I think those folks that are pursuing those types of degrees are wandering into a plant because that's part of their requirement to graduate, is to get that internship on them.
That is, the university I was at, it was required to have that experience. And I think that is a good experience, that you're not just studying the textbooks, you're actually getting that live, real experience to know what you're going to be getting into. Another good thing that I know St. Louis has it because obviously we've done it, but high school, they have the CAPS program. And I think it's good to get even high school student, like that age group, get them experience and exposure to this. Like we brought on several interns that were in high school still, and they had half a day where they're in class learning about what the real life world's going to be. But then the second half of the day, they're here interning with us. And I think that's something good because when I was going through high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I feel like a lot of kids don't know what they want to do. So it's good to have to go in person, see what it actually is versus just guessing and hoping what the career path is going to look like for you.
Yeah. Well, and I use this term, cybersecurity is a big word, right? It's a kind of a boil the ocean kind of term. And those students in high school, at least they were thinking about cybersecurity, right? They didn't know exactly what field in this particular case when they wandered into our shop, realizing that we were doing cybersecurity, but it was really kind of a different angle for them when they realized what it was, right?
Yeah, it was different. And he started same time I did. He's been here 4 years and he said, I didn't know this was an option, but now is able to tailor his college path around what we're doing, kind of build his own degree almost.
Yeah. And what would you say to students today, people that are thinking about either whether it's a career change or those that are going through school, what would you recommend for them to do if this is something that they wanted to pursue, besides listening to our podcast?
That's definitely number one. I'd say it's good to go talk. I mean, finding a mentor, somebody you can go talk to. I know a lot of places they bring speakers in where they will talk about their experience or their career path and just pushing yourself to learn what's out there. You need to embrace change in this field and really any field. So kind of embracing what's out there, and it's okay to make a career path change. I mean, I use my degree a little bit to the extent of like the technical background, but it's okay to make a change and it might be the best change of your life. You don't know until you do it. So I'd say it's good to just embrace what can happen and go with the flow.
Yeah. So what comes next for Emma, future-wise? I mean, what do you got going on in your current job? I know you talked about traveling a lot and you're part of a very large engineering organization. So what are your thoughts in your current role and where you're headed?
Yeah, that's also kind of what I'm trying to figure out at the moment with the big changes with the new company and everything. Trying to figure out where I want my career path to go and what that'll look like. So right now I'm still on a technical path, but I've talked to a couple of like my mentors here and if I want to go into project management or something like that. And it's nice at these big companies where you kind of have the ability to move laterally throughout the company and still work with the same team, but also expand it. So I'd say I'll let you know, Dino, when I know.
The IT-OT convergence piece is key. As you're seeing those relationships getting better, are you starting to see an OT cybersecurity practice within these organizations? One, to start developing it, and how are they finding people to do this? Two, are there a lot of them requiring and leaning on their partners and or managed services to help them initially to manage all this information? Because to me, it's a net new ad when you put a tool like Claroty in and you start seeing things that you've never really seen before in a different light, context to your point. And then we help with that context to provide value and insights to that. Are you seeing practices growing, not only just the ecosystem within the client itself, but the ecosystem that's supplying services and technologies to the manufacturers? Organizations like ours who build machines, build plants, right? Do control system work.
Yeah. So it's definitely something I've seen shift. Again, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was no one even going after managed security services in this space. They wanted the IT stuff. Clearly, that's a well-trodden area, right? There's tons of folks. You can pick your favorite. But now a lot of folks are trying to get into it. A lot of the big consulting firms, a lot of system integrators. We're seeing even the manufacturers, right? Rockwell, they're offering services now for this sort of stuff. So I see that changing a lot just in industry. It's also something that I think is really challenging. Like your first question there on the people, I think that's one of the hardest things, right? Like it is, I've seen it go both directions where you hire a systems guy and try and teach him security, or you hire a security guy and try and teach him OT. The challenge is it takes a lot of lived experience, or at least from what I've seen, it takes a lot of lived experience. Like me, I was never planning on getting into security, was forced into it, kind of got thrown into the deep end and just had to do it. And we had to meet an audit, right? The NRC was coming in. They didn't care how unprepared we were. They're going to shut us down if we're not ready. And so we had to figure it out. And you had to get in there, do it, get your hands dirty and start working with it. And that, I think, is the hardest thing. It's like to be able to get that experience. So that's why I've seen a lot of these. I think there is a limited talent pool of these folks, like the overlap of the security and systems knowledge. So I see a lot of these managed service providers and other organizations like snatching those folks up. And that's why a lot of them have done well or starting to do well, because they're able to field the right type of people. It's another thing where I have seen organizations build these themselves in-house, and it's something I think we'll continue to see more of, but it's also something I just see shift a lot with IT organizations. Are we going to do it in-house, and then someone comes on and decides we're going to move it all off to a consulting firm, and then someone else comes in and says, no, we got to bring it all in-house again. I think you see those same type of things happening here. So broadly, I think that it kind of follows that same type of shifts that we've seen in the IT ecosystem over the years, right? Like, it's going to get more advanced. It's going to continue to get more advanced. You're going to have more and more people coming on that are doing this. I think it's a very hot focused area right now. So I think it's going to continue expanding, and then we'll see some of these shifts keep on going on.
Yeah. So folks, back to the people, I don't know if you've heard this term Peak 65, but you have a very large amount of baby boomers that are getting ready to retire in the millions. And a lot of them are in these manufacturing environments. There's a lot of tribal knowledge getting ready to walk out the door to the tune of, I don't know, however many millions it is between now and 2027, I think is where the biggest number of folks that are leaving. So now you have a younger generation coming in, and working in manufacturing is not something that they've always viewed as being cool, dark, dirty, dangerous. So back to the resource pool, it's getting smaller. The question is, how do we start expanding this, which is where I think the industrial world, from an OT perspective, has to be more involved in this, in my view, right? You got the IT side, to your point, they've been doing cybersecurity for decades, a couple more. And so they're really good with technologies and solutions and resources and budgeting and governance and policy. And now we need to start shifting that into this OT realm and start developing those same types of capabilities. So to the people side, are you seeing an influx of youngsters coming in, as far as programs that people are putting at the university level or training programs at the state level or?
So I've definitely seen it with schools and stuff. I mean, Claroty is engaged with a number of both government entities and like schools that are trying to put in security practices, and they've kind of expanded into this OT space. I think it's a slower time coming, but it's definitely there. It's also something I think that you're going to see as more and more, like on the manufacturing side, the OEMs. Newer Rockwell stuff is not the same as Slick 5s and PLC 5s. There's more modern programming stuff. It matches more with what you would do with other systems. Yes, it's highly specialized things still exist, but I think it is going to slowly trend in a more modern direction. I don't know how long that's going to take because the OEMs move pretty slowly, but I think as that happens, you'll see expertise be able to come online more frequently or more quickly than they can in the past. Because I can tell you, like, to your point, I had to learn Fortran at my first job. I was straight out of college and I'm learning Fortran, and I had to work on a mainframe system. That still exists out there. I mean, that's all over the place. I think about that as well, because these folks leave, you end up relying so much on the vendors at that point. And they're even losing people. You have these systems that have been in for 30, 40, 50 years, and someone's got to know them. I don't have a silver bullet for this one. I think eventually it'll change. And for greenfield stuff, it'll keep getting better. But the brownfield stuff, I think, is going to be a challenge for companies for a long time.
In Claroty, you guys are kind of in a unique position and role, geopolitical, globally. What do you see going on around the globe as far as certain nations doing a better job at providing cybersecurity solutions and technologies in their critical manufacturing, around the world? I mean, how's that global piece shaping up as far as your perspective?
So I've seen a lot of changes recently, like the European Union's doing a bunch of new requirements around NIS2, like changing how critical infrastructure is defined and adding on stuff. In the US, I mentioned early on the TSA coming online to start doing cyber regs. AES CFI in Australia. There's a lot of these new regulatory bodies coming in. I think more adoption across a kind of global thing, I think would be better. I mean, we do have some global standards like IEC 62443 that a lot of folks adhere to, but I do see a lot of reinventing the wheel that happens when these new regulators enter the space that I think makes it challenging both for the regulator trying to practice this stuff and then the users trying to perform these controls, figure out how they're going to deal with an audit. I think it definitely changed, but I have seen it change dramatically. I think European Union has been doing good and leaning forward. I think the United States has a lot of good initiatives moving forward on this as well. So they're definitely starting to move in this direction. But I do talk with a lot of folks that aren't in regulated industries today. And I always try and tell them, like, just because you're not today doesn't mean you're not tomorrow. I've heard folks say, like, the pandemic really opened up that all infrastructure is critical infrastructure, like manufacturing of toilet paper all of a sudden became critical infrastructure. And you would never think of that in the past. Like, that's not power, that's not water, that's not all these transportation or whatever. But the more and more connected we get, the more and more that this stuff has such a outsized impact on the public. I think you're going to continue to see either government step in or shareholders step in. So I think even if you're lucky enough not to have a regulator, like, it's good to lean forward a little bit and start trying to work on this and start trying to secure yourself.
Yeah. And because you guys have a global view of what's going on, I mean, your stuff's installed all over the world. Mm-hmm. Are you seeing the attacks in particular regions higher in certain areas compared to others?
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting. So we do a conference every year called Nexus. And this year we had the general who is in charge of Ukraine's cyber response came along. And that was incredibly interesting. Like, the attack before the kinetic war started in Ukraine, there was a massive cyber operation that occurred ahead of time. And they had to move all of their infrastructure into the cloud so that they didn't have hard targets that could be hit and take out, their water and their power and all these things. So they had to do this pretty dramatically, pretty quickly. And obviously we've seen in various geo regions, like, more both kinetic warfare starting, but we're seeing cyber attacks as well. I mean, I think you see it very recently with Israel and what's going on with Lebanon and Iran. This nation state type stuff is definitely happening. There's definitely regions that are a little bit heated up. But I can tell you just from what I've seen, like, the same guys, the same access of folks are still out there trying to do this. But even outside the nation state, it's expanded dramatically, where a lot of these same nations now have either hackers for hire that can do stuff, or they're targeting these types of systems because they know they can get them to pay out. Particularly, I've seen this a lot in medical. You see a lot of it where they'll hit ransomware at hospital organizations or large HCOs because they know they may have cyber insurance. I've seen it where they actually hack a cyber insurer to figure out who's insured to start targeting them because they know they'll get a payout. So all of it's getting a lot more advanced, even outside of the nation state type stuff. Obviously, we have these conflicts going on, but even outside of that, as it becomes more lucrative and as these dark groups can go after it just to straight up make money, it's more effective. And I think you're going to continue to see that expanding.
So shifting gears a little bit, one of the things that I've witnessed is IT, in a lot of cases, has gone out and bought an IDS package. Whether it's IT or OT, they got an IDS package. Usually something that was born out of the IT realm versus something specific to the OT realm. Are you seeing any shifts in clients that have made a decision to buy a tool and recognize that the tool that they bought initially isn't giving them everything that they need in regards to what's going on in that OT environment? I mean, Claroty is a highly specialized OT industrial detection system that brings a lot of features and functionalities to it, where some of these other tools are a little light. Our organization, as an SI and an OEM, I believe that we should be on the receiving end. If you have a tool that, as work that we're doing inside these manufacturing facilities, there's a lot of insights and beneficial data to help with the projects that we're doing, either helping you expand your visibility in this technology in the machine centers or the plants that we're building for you, and or help us with our startups. And sometimes I don't get that. IT bought the tool, they're doing their thing. OT guys are unaware of a lot of the insights and the data. Have you seen a good way to say, look, because we'll go in with our own tools. They bought tool X, and visibility on the plant's maybe 10 or 15, 20%. We're getting ready to fire up a packaging line to do a startup. and we want to know more about the inside of that plant. So we'll bring in our own stuff and discover and learn.
Thanks for tuning in to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. To stay up to date with our latest episodes, be sure to click the follow or subscribe button now. And if you found this podcast helpful or have a topic you'd like us to discuss, please leave us a review or let us know. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.